Welcome to the deep dive. We take a whole stack of information, break it down, and pull out the key insights to help you get informed fast. Today, we're really getting into something quite dramatic out of Burkina Faso. A foiled plot against Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
Yeah, and this is more than just your typical coup attempt story. It really shows how modern conflicts are, fought and won these days.
Exactly, not just with guns, but with whispers, with algorithms. It's fascinating. By the end of this, you'll kind of see the blueprint for these invisible wars everyone's starting to talk about. Okay, so our sources for this deep dive, they include intelligence reports, some leaked communications, which are always interesting.
They're known for pretty sharp geopolitical takes, especially on African affairs.
Definitely. So our mission here is to, unpack the complexity of this alleged conspiracy. It wasn't just a simple power grab, it seems. It morphed into something much bigger, like a multi-layered shadow war. We want to look at who was involved, why it happened, and critically, how Traoré responded. All right, let's dive straight into the core drama, the plot itself.
Okay.
We're talking June 9th, 2025. The target is Captain Ibrahim Traoré. The plan, pretty audacious. 119 trained men, a coordinated assault, storm the palace, assassinate him, basically throw the country into chaos.
And what's really unsettling, as you said, is how close they apparently came.
Yeah.
And the discovery back in early April.
Yeah, it started small, didn't it? Just strange communications, chatter between some low-ranking officers, contacts across the border. Nothing concrete at first.
But it wasn't haphazard. The reports say the conspiracy was, and this is a quote, stitched together with chilling precision.
Chilling precision, routes, timing, strike teams, even fallback plans. This wasn't someone thinking about a coup.
No, this was a coup in the execution phase. It was happening.
So these conspirators, who are they? Outside agitators, or something maybe more disturbing?
Well, that's what's really fascinating. Their profile. These weren't, rebels in the bush or anything like that. These were men in uniform, active duty soldiers, some retired officers. Critically, some had direct access to the presidential complex.
Access is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Others had served right under officers known to be loyal to Traoré. So they had access to weapons, bases, intelligence briefings, even Traoré's daily movements. That makes them incredibly dangerous.
And you mentioned cross-border chatter earlier. Was there an external element suspected from the start?
Yes, there were whispers early on that elements from outside Burkina Faso were helping to coordinate and fund the effort.
Funding, too.
And the plan itself, the execution details, very precise, coordinated apparently, using encrypted messaging apps and burner phones.
Wow, okay, so sophisticated methods.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They planned to hit Traoré as he was returning from inspecting a newly fortified northern base. The idea was to catch him exposed, create that power vacuum fast.
And allow who to step in. Was there a plan for that?
It seems so. A pre-selected group of interim leaders were meant to seize key government buildings once the chaos started.
So an incredibly detailed plan, down to the timing, location, the succession, and the external link you mentioned. How clear was that connection early on?
Well, the intelligence started pointing towards some, let's say, alarming connections pretty quickly.
Like what?
One seemed to be towards radicalized militias operating near that tri-border area, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, always a volatile zone.
Okay, that's maybe expected.
But the other was more specific, towards foreign operatives suspected of coordinating from inside neighboring Ivory Coast.
Ivory Coast. Okay, that raises eyebrows. Any evidence?
There was mention of unregistered cross-border vehicle movement in the days leading up.
Right.
Plus, this really begs the question, was this purely local, a coup for power within Burkina Faso?
Oh.
Or was it a foreign intervention by proxy? Now, officially it's unconfirmed, but investigators reportedly found things like suspicious currency exchanges, foreign SIM cards.
Foreign SIMs, okay.
And get this, references to rendezvous points labeled in French intelligence shorthand.
French intelligence shorthand, that's very specific.
Extremely specific. It strongly suggests a coordinated external hand. And the timing, April 2025, you have to look at the context.
What was happening then?
Traoré's influence was surging, not just in Burkina Faso, but across Africa. His speeches were getting a lot of traction online regionally. The Alliance of Sahel States, the AES, was firming up new military agreements with Mali and Niger.
Right, that alliance was worrying some external powers.
Exactly. There was this growing anxiety among, let's call them foreign interests, who felt they were losing their military foothold in West Africa. So the plot emerges right at that peak moment.
Okay, so the link seems pretty strong, even if they won't say it officially. How was it actually stopped? You said it was in the execution phase.
The turning point, according to the reports, was actually a junior officer, someone relatively low down the chain.
Really? What did they do?
Flagged unusual nighttime activity at a rural checkpoint. Something just didn't feel right. That triggered a counterintelligence response, and it moved fast. Within 72 hours, they'd unraveled the core of the plot.
Wow, incredible. A junior officer's observation possibly saved the day. So the evidence for foreign involvement, it seems pretty compelling, circumstantial or not. But beyond just, helping a coup succeed, what was the bigger picture for these external actors? Why Traoré specifically?
Exactly. That's where it shifts from just coup to conspiracy and maybe from insurgency to interference. It wasn't just about swapping out one leader for another.
So who was pulling the strings, or at least coordinating?
Well, intelligence points towards a key figure within the plotters, Bahari Abdurrahman. A decorated officer, known for being sharp, internationally trained, had a loyal public image. Formally loyal, anyway. But his digital footprint, hidden financial transfers, coded messages, they all suggested coordination with actors outside Burkina Faso's borders.
Actors where? You mentioned Ivory Coast.
Yes, multiple sources confirm contacts there. And Ivory Coast, of course, has long-standing economic and security ties with France.
Okay. The French connection.
Surveillance apparently picked up encrypted transmissions routed through Ivorian telecom hubs, and some captured conspirators admitted under questioning that their orders came from operatives based outside of Burkina Faso's jurisdiction.
So orders from outside the country, that's significant.
It really is. And you have to connect it to the broader geopolitical shifts happening since 2022. Traoré did some major things.
Like expelling French troops.
Exactly. Expelled French troops, canceled long-standing Western military deals, pivoted towards these Pan-African alliances, AES with Mali and Niger, but also strengthening ties with Russia.
So the AES, this alliance, it really represents what?
It represents essentially a block of former colonies charting an independent path, a path without dependency on Paris or Washington or Brussels. And that's a huge challenge to traditional Western influence in the region.
Which makes Traoré himself
a threat worth eliminating. Yes. And remember the timing again. Just weeks before this plot was uncovered, Traoré had ramped up military cooperation with Russia. AES leaders were actively working on plans for a common currency, joint military drills.
Things that would really solidify their independence?
Precisely.
Yeah.
That seems to have been a clear red line for those outside powers who are used to, soft occupation, having military bases, favorable mining contracts. Burkina Faso, under Traoré, was becoming more than just independent. It was becoming a symbol of resistance.
A symbol of resistance, that's a powerful way to frame it. So the plot wasn't just tactical, it was strategic, even ideological.
That's how it lives. Think about the strategy. First, you try pressure. Vague travel advisories, financial pressure, withholding aid, freezing investments, basic diplomatic strangulation.
But Burkina Faso didn't fold.
Apparently they didn't blink.
Yeah.
So when that fails, what's the next step? You exploit weaknesses from within. You co-opt the ambitious, the disgruntled, like Abdurahman, perhaps.
Yeah, turn insiders against the leader.
And the ultimate aim wasn't just killing Traoré the man. It was to destroy a model, to send a very clear, very brutal message to any other African nation thinking about stepping out of the established Western orbit.
And the evidence for this foreign involvement beyond the communications, intercepts, and confessions?
There was physical evidence, too. Things like unmarked weapons, currency that wasn't the local CFA franc, communication software traced back to networks apparently funded by NATO sources.
Wow, traceable software.
And maybe the most damning thing, a dossier found among the plotters' materials. It contained outlines for a post-Traoré stabilization roadmap.
A plan for after the coup.
Exactly. And it was so detailed, so polished, the analysis suggested it was almost certainly pre-written. Someone had already planned the aftermath.
Astonishing. A pre-written post-coup roadmap. Okay, this brings us to what I find maybe the most insidious part of this whole thing, the psychological warfare aspect. You're saying this plot aimed to poison trust itself, even before any shots were fired. How do you even do that? How do you break a revolution from the inside without firing a shot?
It was described as a full-scale disinformation campaign, targeting the military, the media, the political structures.
Go.
The goal, simple but devastating. Divide the loyalists, confuse the chain of command, and erode faith in Traoré's leadership from within.
How did that work in practice? What did it look like?
Well, one tactic was conflicting military orders. Imagine being an officer, you get contradictory directives, stand down, no change base immediately, no explanation.
Chaos.
Exactly. Communication channels got clogged with urgent but unclear messages. And here's the really clever part. Some were signed using legitimate command names, but the commanders hadn't actually issued them.
So spoofing orders, like email phishing, but for military commands.
Sort of, yeah. A ghosting of the command structure, as one report put it. You don't know what's real anymore.
That's terrifying. So it wasn't just confusion, it was active sabotage of their comms.
Precisely. Then came the next layer. False briefings and faked intel.
Like what?
Junior officers being told, maybe quietly in the mess hall, hey, there's a reshuffle coming. Traoré doesn't trust your unit anymore. Loyal commanders getting warnings. Be careful, your own men might be plotting.
Sowing suspicion everywhere.
Everywhere. Field leaders were apparently shown doctored reports suggesting their units were infiltrated. The message, unspoken but clear, was, you're on your own. Trust no one.
And when soldiers start suspecting their comrades,
That's when the whole system starts to fray. When generals doubt their orders, when soldiers doubt their neighbors. The aim wasn't a frontal assault. It was to soften it, like fruit left in the sun, as one analyst described it, make it fall apart from within.
And did this stay within the military, or did it leak out?
Oh, it absolutely spilled into the civilian world through social media, anonymous blogs, those encrypted messaging platforms again.
WhatsApp groups, Telegram.
Exactly. Suddenly, you see these seemingly spontaneous rumors spreading like wildfire. Traoré has fled the country. The military split. There's infighting. Russia's pulling its support. The AES alliance, it's collapsing.
All false, presumably.
All false. But in that climate of uncertainty, perception can quickly become reality for a lot of people.
How sophisticated was this disinformation campaign? Could they trace it?
They tried. Cyber units apparently traced dozens of these false narratives back to IP addresses outside Burkina Faso, routed through VPNs to mask their origin.
Standard practice for covert ops.
Right, and some posts even appeared to be AI generated. They were written fluently in local dialects, tailored to specific regional anxieties. Like in the north, maybe spreading rumors that Traoré has sold the north to Russian mercenaries, hitting those local nerve points.
AI-generated tailored disinformation. That's next level.
It really is. And the chilling purpose, wasn't necessarily to convince everyone.
Just enough people.
Just enough. Enough to make soldiers hesitate when an order comes. Enough to make civilians panic and maybe hoard goods or spread fear. Enough, potentially, to make one bodyguard lower his weapon at the wrong moment.
Just create that critical hesitation.
Exactly. And this invisible coup, it almost worked. Sources inside later confirmed that in those crucial hours before the plot was fully dismantled, Loyalist commanders were genuinely confused. They were on the verge of issuing contradictory orders because they didn't know who was loyal and who was a traitor.
Paralysis.
Complete paralysis. In some cases, units actually refused to move without direct verbal confirmation from Traoré himself. They couldn't trust the digital chain of command anymore. It was digitally and psychologically paralyzed.
So if that junior officer hadn't flagged that checkpoint activity,
Burkina Faso could have woken up to find its president gone, its army in disarray, and its sovereignty effectively handed back to foreign benefactors, who of course would have clean hands publicly.
wow, the attack wasn't just on his life, it was on the nation's mind.
Precisely. An attack on Burkina Faso's mind.
Okay, that is truly unsettling. An attack on the mind of a nation. It makes you wonder, how? How do you even begin to fight back against that? Something so insidious. What did Traoré actually do after uncovering all this?
Well, the immediate response was, as you might expect, swift and quite brutal internally. There was a deep purge within the military.
Cleaning house.
Absolutely. Traoré's security teams launched a massive internal audit. Communications logs, officer movements, duty rosters, everything scrutinized. Any inconsistencies, any hint of disloyalty meant reassignment, detention, or outright discharge.
So loyalty became paramount.
It became, as Traoré apparently put it, structural. Loyalty was no longer optional. It is structural. Build it into the system.
But purging isn't enough against psychological warfare.
No, and he seemed to recognize that. He understood the war had shifted into the narrative space, the information domain. So his counterattack had to be ideological as well.
How did he do that?
With a very powerful public campaign. He didn't just say, we stopped a coup. He deliberately redefined the attempted coup not as a mere internal betrayal, but as a continuation of Africa's anti-colonial struggle.
Ah, framing it much bigger. That's smart. A masterstroke, really. Turning an attack into like an ideological validation. How did he deliver that message?
Very effectively. Within hours of the plot being announced, he addressed the nation. Not from a stuffy office, but among soldiers in camouflage, without notes, without handlers. Very direct, very visual.
And what did he say?
The key line everyone remembers is, "They tried to kill me because they couldn't control me." Simple, powerful. It reframed the whole thing. He wasn't just a victim, he was a target because of his principles, because of his independence.
And I would resonate.
Hugely. It galvanized domestic support almost instantly. And it also put foreign actors implicitly accused on the back foot.
Right.
It really was a master stroke of political communication.
Okay, so address the narrative head on. What else? Did he double down on the regional alliances?
Yes, that was the next pillar. Strategic expansions. Through regional cooperation, he immediately intensified regional cooperation with Mali and Niger. The AES wasn't just a concept anymore, it became a real military compact.
How so? What changed practically?
They extended joint patrol zones along the borders, updated their intelligence sharing protocols, presumably learning lessons from the plot, and crucially, they accelerated plans for a centralized AES command center.
A joint command. That's a big step.
A huge step. It acts as a deterrent against future hybrid attacks like this one. Traoré's message seemed to be, look, if they almost got us by infiltrating one government, our survival depends on becoming one force. The AES became a core survival strategy.
Makes sense. Fight division with unity. Did he also address the digital vulnerabilities, the disinformation?
Oh, yes. He essentially began retooling Burkina Faso's information architecture, recognizing that future battleground.
What did that involve?
Commissioning new cybersecurity units, specifically to monitor and counter disinformation. Creating a government media task force for real-time fact-checking and putting out official briefings quickly to counter rumors.
Getting ahead of the narrative.
Exactly. And setting up social media war rooms, staffed, interestingly, with multilingual youth trained to detect and counter foreign influence digital campaigns, mobilizing the population, essentially. He really did take the war online.
Taking the war online, that's quite a shift. Was there anything symbolic? Leaders often use symbols in times like these.
There was, and it was powerful. The unveiling of a new national monument called La Garde de la Nation, the Guard of the Nation. It's a statue of three faceless soldiers standing back to back, rifles in hand, guarding a single flame. The symbolism is pretty clear: collective defense, vigilance, protecting the nation's spirit.
Faceless soldiers, representing everyone.
Exactly. And Traoré used that unveiling ceremony to deliver another incredibly powerful line, one that really resonated across the region. He said, "They will try again, but we are no longer defending one man. We are defending an idea, and ideas don't bleed."
Wow, ideas don't bleed. That's potent.
Incredibly potent. It shifted the entire focus away from fear of another assassination attempt towards collective resilience.
Yeah.
Defending the idea of an independent Burkina Faso and independent Sahel.
What an incredible journey we've taken here from, the raw details of that assassination plot.
Right, the 119 men, the palace storming plan.
To the really deep geopolitical currents, the why behind targeting Traoré and Burkina Faso.
The pushback against Western influence, the rise of the ADS.
And then diving into that truly insidious psychological warfare, the disinformation, the ghosting of command.
The attack on trust itself.
Yeah, the attack on the nation's mind. But then also seeing how Captain Traoré responded the purge, yes, but also the narrative reframing, the regional unity, taking the fight online, fortifying the revolution, really.
It was a multi-layered defense against a multi-layered attack.
Absolutely. So this deep dive hopefully has shown you how these modern conflicts are playing out. It's way beyond conventional warfare now.
Definitely far beyond tanks and planes.
So here's something for you, the listener, to maybe think about after this. In a world where information itself, where narrative is a weapon, how can any nation, big or small, truly defend its sovereignty from these invisible coups? Especially when the ultimate battlefield is the human mind.